Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah here. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, and Mirtz Hashem, today we will be learning Daf Ayin Daled Amud Beis. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today 2 lines off the bottom of Ayin Daled Amud Aleph, Simin Reish Ches Tzadik Sif Yud Gimel. Our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, Hanesunim Batzaro Bashivya, Ha'imdim Bein Bayom Ubein Bayabasha, Hamakim Yirachem Aleihem, V'yetziam Yitzar L'Rvacha Me'afelo La'ira Mishiba L'Geula, Hashta Bagolo V'zman Koriv V'nemar Amen. Our learning should be a schus for Shalema, for Chava Hadassah Bas Rezel Serel. Our learning should be a schus for Yisrael ben Rachel, Yonason ben Michal, and Yoel ben Michal. The Rabbeinu Shalom should watch over them together with all of our other brothers and sisters who find themselves in harm's way. B'chol makom shehem. So here in Siman Reish Ches Tzadik, we're continuing to learn the halachas of the Berchas Haner, the bracha of Berurah Ma'orei Ha'esh that we make as part of Havdalah. Let's just remind everyone, why do we make a Berurah Ma'orei Ha'esh on Motzei Shabbos? Because it was on Motzei Shabbos that the Rabbeinu Shalom put the idea into Adam HaRishon's head. The language that we saw was the Rebbeinu Shalom gave das to Adam HaRishon, and Adam HaRishon came up with this idea to go take 2 rocks, bang them together, produce a spark, and kindle a fire. And from there, that's how we first got artificial, if you want to call it, illumination. But so now we make the bracha, we thank the Rebbeinu Shalom on Motzei Shabbos for the creation of fire, for the creation of light. The bracha is Berurah Ma'orei Ha'esh. We thank Hashem who created the Ma'orei, the multiple lights, the multiple colors of fire. So that's the bracha that we make on Motzei Shabbos. Now Sif Yud Gimel says, the Mechaber, Suma, a blind individual, Eina Mavarich. A blind individual cannot make this brachas hashvach. He can't make this bracha of Berurah Ma'orei Ha'esh. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ayis Katan Lamed Daled, Eina Mavarich, seems pretty simple. Because we learned that in order to make this bracha, you need to be able to derive benefit from the fire. We saw that you have to be able to discern between the coin of one country and the coin of another country. So you have to be able to derive some significant benefit from the flame in order to recite a bracha over it. And certainly a blind individual is not going to be able to derive this kind of benefit from the fire, therefore he cannot make the bracha. Now we have a very interesting piece of Mishnah Berurah here. Vayin b'Pri Megadim. The Mishnah Berurah brings down the Pri Megadim. The nishar b'tzarich iyun. The Pri Megadim remains with an unresolved question. Im yachal lahoitzi acherim bebracha zu. A blind individual who's making Havdalah, can he be moitzi other people with the bracha of Berurah Ma'orei Ha'esh? He can't make the Berurah Ma'orei Ha'esh for himself because he can't see or derive any benefit from the flame. But could he make the Berurah Ma'orei Ha'esh in order to be moitzi other people? Says the Mishnah Berurah, the Pri Megadim leaves this unresolved. Part of the reason that he has this unresolved question, says the Mishnah Berurah, is keven shu ba'atzmai poter min hadavar, because the Suma himself is exempt from making the bracha of Berurah Ma'orei Ha'esh. Indeed, some write it's aser for the Suma to make a bracha of Berurah Ma'orei Ha'esh. It would be a bracha levatala, but he's certainly poter, he's certainly exempt, and if he's exempt, he cannot be moitzi other people. We'll explain this. Now, let's remember, back in Siman Reish Tzadik Zayin, we had a very similar case. In Reish Tzadik Zayin, we were talking about the bracha of Berurah Minei B'samim. Over there, the Mechaber said an interesting halacha. The Mechaber said, what happens if you have a person who has no sense of smell? Said the Mechaber, if a person has no sense of smell, he cannot make the bracha of Berurah Minei B'samim unless he's making it in order to be moitzi b'nei beisai haktanim. If he has young children, so he has an obligation of chinuch. He has an obligation to be mechanech his children. So if he has young children and he has to make the bracha for them, then he could make the bracha. Or, said the Mechaber, he could also make the bracha on behalf of an adult who's eina yedea, an adult who doesn't know how to make the bracha for himself. So when it comes to the bracha of Berurah Minei B'samim, the Mechaber says, even if somebody has no sense of smell, If there's another adult who doesn't know how to make the bracha on his own, the person with no sense of smell could make the bracha for him and could be moitzi him in the bracha. Now the Mishnah Berurah brought down that all of the Achronim disagree with this mechaber. And in the Shar Tzion over there in Reish Tzadik Zayin, he brought down the Taz, the Magen Avram, the El Yerabba. They all disagree with this mechaber. Why do they disagree with the mechaber? So we learned over there in the Mishnah Berurah that these Achronim reason that the bracha of Bar Mina B'Samim, let's remember, why do we make the bracha of Bar Mina B'Samim? The reason we make the bracha is because on Shabbos, the Rebbeinu Shalom gave us a Neshama Yisera. Motzei Shabbos, when Shabbos departs, our Neshama Yisera also departs. When we lose that Neshama Yisera, it's a letdown. It's even a physical letdown. And therefore, we make a bracha Bar Mina B'Samim over pleasant aromatic spices in order to revive ourselves. We had a little bit of a letdown from the loss of the Neshama Yisera. We need a pick-me-up. We get that pick-me-up by making a Bar Mina B'Samim over aromatic spices. Now, the Mishnah Berurah said, that is not a Birchas HaMitzvahs. That's not something that's a real chiyuv, that we have a chiyuv of B'Samim on Motzei Shabbos. It's a minig. It's a minig that was put into place in order to revive ourselves. Says the Mishnah Berurah that Bar Mina B'Samim, it's not a Birchas HaMitzvahs. It's not a bracha like Lishmaya Kol Shofar. It's not a bracha like Al Netilas Lulav, a bracha that you're making over an obligatory mitzvah. Instead, really, it's a Birchas HaNenin. It's like making a Shakal Niyah B'Dvarei over a cup of water. Now you're making a Birchas HaNenin, you're making a Bar Mina B'Samim over pleasant-smelling spices. But it's not really a chiyuv. Said the Mishnah Berurah, therefore, Achronim like the Taz, the Magen Avram, the El Yerabba, they say, if somebody has no sense of smell, so he himself cannot smell the B'Samim, he can't make a bracha for another individual. You know what that would be like? That would be like somebody wants to take a cup of water, and he doesn't want to make the shahakal. So he asks you to be moitzi him in the shahakal. If you're not going to take a drink of water, you can't be moitzi somebody else in a shahakal. Why? Because the whole idea of being moitzi somebody else in a bracha is based on the concept of arvus. It's based on the concept of shared responsibility. So I have a chiyuv of shofar, you have a chiyuv of shofar. I have a shared responsibility to facilitate you being mekayim your mitzvah of shofar. So I could be moitzi you in the bracha of shofar. And I could be moitzi you in the bracha of shofar even if I'm no longer chayiv in shofar. Even if I heard shofar already, I could still be moitzi you in the bracha of shofar because of arvus. But there's no arvus on drinking a cup of water. You're not obligated to drink a cup of water. You want to drink a cup of water, you're obligated to make a shahakal, but you're not obligated to take the drink of water in the first place. Therefore, there's no arvus. I don't have a shared responsibility to help facilitate you in your drinking of a cup of water. Therefore, I can't make a Birchas HaNenin for you. Now, if I'm drinking water and you're drinking water, so okay. So to say I have to make a bracha on my water. Once I'm making a bracha on my water, I could be moitzi you, and I could cover your shahakal on your water. But if I'm not drinking water, I can't be moitzi you in your shahakal over your cup of water. Says the Taz, the Magen Avram, the El Yerabba, same thing by Bar Mina B'Samim. If you don't have a sense of smell, you can't be moitzi somebody else in a Bar Mina B'Samim. There's no arvus on Bar Mina B'Samim. Bar Mina B'Samim is not a real chiyuv. It's just a Birchas HaNenin. You need to have a sweet smell to revive yourself. Okay, the guy with the cup of water needs a good drink of water to quench his thirst. So you can't be moitzi somebody in the Bar Mina B'Samim. That's what we learned in Reish Tzadik Zayin. Now over here, we're talking about Borei Marei Eish, and we're talking about a blind person. So how do we look at this? So the first question becomes, what exactly is the status of the Borei Marei Eish? Is the Borei Marei Eish a Birchas HaNenin, like a shahakal on a cup of water, and like the Bar Mina B'Samim over the B'Samim? Are we going to look at it and say, hey, you're blind, you can't be nana from the nair, you can't be moitzi somebody else in the bracha, it's like covering him on the shahakal on a cup of water? Or is it really more like a Birchas HaMitzvahs? So think about it. We already discussed previously that the bracha of Borei Marei Eish is a Birchas HaShvach. we have a chiyuv to thank the Ribbono Shel Olam on Motzei Shabbos for the creation of fire. That's not like the Bar Mina B'Samim. The Bar Mina B'Samim, we don't have a chiyuv on Motzei Shabbos to thank the Ribbono Shel Olam for creating aromatic spices. We need to smell B'Samim on Motzei Shabbos for ourselves. We lost our Neshama Yisera. We had a letdown. We need to smell B'Samim. Since we need to smell B'Samim, right? You want to smell sweet-smelling spices, you need to make a Berachas Hanenin first. So the Bar Mina B'Samim is very much like the cup of water. Thirsty person, he needs water to quench his thirst. He needs to make a Berachas Hanenin. Motzei Shabbos, you lost your Neshama Yisera, you need to revive yourself. You need to smell sweet-smelling aromatic spices. So you need to make a Berachas Hanenin, Bar Mina B'Samim. Bari Mariyesh is not that way. Bari Mariyesh, I have a chiyuv on Motzei Shabbos to thank the Ribbono Shel Olam for the creation of fire on Motzei Shabbos. That's more like a Berachas HaMitzvahs. So over here, maybe we could apply Arvus, and we could say, yes, this person who's making Havdalah is blind, but he has a shared responsibility to facilitate the people who are listening to Havdalah, to facilitate them being Mekayim their chiyuv of Bari Mariyesh. And therefore, even though he's blind, he could be mitzi them in their Bari Mariyesh. So that would be the argument to make and say that, yes, a blind person can be mitzi other people in the Bari Mariyesh. But then there's a very, very potent counter-argument. And if you look in the Pri Megadim inside, it sounds to me like the Pri Megadim is much more disposed to this second way of looking at it than the first way. The second way of looking at it is what the Mishnah Berurah writes over here. The Mishnah Berurah says, you see, the Summa is potter. He's not a bar chiyuva. He has no chiyuv to make a Bari Mariyesh. A blind person cannot have a chiyuv to thank the Ribbono Shel Olam for the creation of fire. He doesn't benefit from the fire. He can't see it. He can't get any hana from the fire. So over here, again, can you apply Arvus? You can't apply Arvus when somebody is totally exempt for something. Now, some of you are going to ask a kasha right away. Well, hold it, Rabbi Weiss. Let's go back. Let's look at Kiddush. Kiddush is a Berachas HaMitzvahs. We all know if you were already Yotze Kiddush, you could still make Kiddush for somebody else who was not yet Yotze Kiddush. Why? You're not Chayiv? No, that's very different. By Kiddush, you have a Chiyuv of Kiddush the same way he is a Chiyuv of Kiddush. The only thing is, you were already Mekayim your Chiyuv of Kiddush. You already fulfilled it. But you're a Bar Chiyuva. You yourself carry a Chiyuv of Kiddush. Since you're a Bar Chiyuva in Kiddush, you could use Arvis to help somebody else be Mekayim his Chiyuv of Kiddush. But over here, by the blind person and Havdalah, he's not a Bar Chiyuva. It's not pshat that he's a Bar Chiyuva, but he was already Yotze his Chiyuv. No, he's not a Bar Chiyuv at all. A blind person has no Chiyuv of Bari Mariyesh. So therefore, the very powerful argument to say that you cannot use Arvis and allow him to be mitzi somebody else. Now, there's a counter-argument to that, too. The counter-argument to that, too, is that the blind person does benefit from fire and from artificial light because other people can help him around on the light. So the blind person is nene from light in a very indirect way, so maybe that's a counter-argument. But again, this is why the Mishnah Berurah brings down this Pri Megadim and says that by Bari Mariyesh, there's a very significant suffix over here, whether a blind person could be mitzi other people in the Bari Mariyesh or not. Continues the Mishnah Berurah over here, nice cut lamadalad. V'chol zeh dafka beberkas Bari Mariyesh. However, remember that this whole shaila only applies to the brach of Bari Mariyesh. Avashar Havdalah Omer, but the rest of Havdalah, a blind person could definitely be mavdil for other people. It brings this down from the Magen Avraham, the Yerabah, other achronim. Okay, now we go to Sifya Dalit, second line off the bottom, Ayin Dalit Amud Aleph, last word on the line. Hayu yoshvim beveis hamedrash. I find this to be a very interesting sif. Hayu yoshvim beveis hamedrash. You have 100 people sitting in the Beis Medrash learning Torah on Motzei Shabbos. Ve'eviu lehem or, and now they bring in a Havdalah candle. So the Mishnah Berurah is going to tell us exactly what was the case over here. Why is the Havdalah candle coming in here into the Beis Medrash in a vacuum? It sounds like it's not part of the Havdalah procedure process. So why is that? But in any case, says the Mechaber, everybody's sitting in the Beis Medrash learning Torah, and now they bring in a Havdalah candle. One person should get up and make a Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Borei Ma'orei Ha'esh, and he should be mitzi everybody else in the bracha, and everybody else will look at the fire. But what's the chiddush over here? Only one person should make the bracha, and he should be mitzi everybody else. Not that each individual should make his own bracha. What's the chiddush? That's what we always do. So let's take a look here at the Mishnah. It says the Mishnah is cut lamed hey. First of all, what's the case? Says the Mishnah Yoshvin, Myri, we're talking about a case. Shevdila mikvar. They already made Havdalah. So they davened Myriv in the Beis Medrash. They made Havdalah in the Beis Medrash. But they didn't have a fire. Or maybe they had one Havdalah candle, but it wasn't besamach lehem, it wasn't close enough, so that people could get hana from it. They weren't able to make a bracha. So the easy case to understand is, they davened Mahariv in the yeshiva, in the Beis Medrash. They went to make Havdalah. They had no candle, they had no fire to make a Havdalah, to make a Bar Mariash on. Okay? So then they made Havdalah without a Bar Mariash. Va'ata, and now an hour later, in the middle of Seder, somebody walked in with a Havdalah candle. Va'ata nizdamin lehem, and now they have a Havdalah candle. Or another possible case. Sheyoidin shelo yeh lehem kais balayla. Maybe they didn't make Havdalah. The reason they didn't make Havdalah is because they didn't have any yayin or any chamar medina to make Havdalah over. So again, they davened Mariv in the yeshiva, and they couldn't make Havdalah because they had no yayin, they had no chamar medina, they had nothing to make Havdalah on. Okay, so now somebody came in with a Havdalah candle. Look, if you can't make Havdalah ala kais, you'll still make a Borei Ma'orei Ha'esh on Motzei Shabbos. So they brought in a Havdalah candle, and now everybody wants to make a Borei Ma'orei Ha'esh. Points out the Mishnah Berurah, if they're still hoping that they're going to get a kais in an hour or two, then they would wait until they got a kais. So again, just to wrap it up over here, basically, the Mishnah Berurah gives us a few options over here. How do we have a case that somehow they're making a Borei Ma'orei Ha'esh in a vacuum in the Beis Medrash, not as part of Havdalah? So says the Mishnah Berurah, maybe they made Havdalah, but when they made Havdalah, they didn't have a Havdalah candle. They had nothing to make a Bar Mariash on. So they made Havdalah without a Bar Mariash. Now, 2 hours later, in the middle of Seder, somebody came in with a Havdalah candle. Or it could be that they didn't make Havdalah. Why didn't they make Havdalah? They didn't make Havdalah because they had no wine. They had no Chamar Medina to make Havdalah on. Okay, did they think they were going to get? If they think that somebody's bringing wine in an hour, don't make a Bar Mariash in a vacuum now. Wait an hour, make Havdalah, insert Bar Mariash into Havdalah in the normal way. But how about if it was a case where they had no Yayid, they had no Chamar Medina, and they had no expectation that they're going to get any? But there's a Havdalah candle. So then they're going to make a Bar Mariash on its own. Now we still have to see, Ois Katan Lamed Vav, what's the Chiddush over here? The Mechaber is coming telling me a big Chiddush. When you get the Havdalah candle and you want to make the Borei Ma'orei Ha'esh, one person should make the Borei Ma'orei Ha'esh. He should be mitzi everybody. Okay, why is that a chiddush? That's what we always do. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Lamed Vav, Echad Bevarach L'Kulam. Fascinating reason. Says the Chavetz Chaim, it is a very strong reason to think that everybody should make their own bracha. You know why? What's going to happen if one person makes the Borei Ma'orei Ha'esh and is mitzi everybody in the Beis Medrash? You know what's going to happen? They're going to go to the Amud, they're going to give a klap on the Amud, they're going to pick up the candle, everybody in the Beis Medrash is going to stop learning, one person is going to make the bracha Borei Ma'orei Ha'esh, everyone's going to say Amen, and they're all going to, be nana from the Nair. You know what that's going to do, says the Chavetz Chaim? The heavy bittul Beis HaMedrash. You're going to be mevatel the entire Beis Medrash. For 2 minutes, you're going to be mevatel the entire Beis Medrash to make the Bar Mariash. Vim Kain, and if so, says the Chavetz Chaim, L'chara hayatov yoseh sheyivarach kalech latzmai. You could make a very powerful argument. Don't do that. Let everybody make their own bracha. So what would that look like? So somebody will come in with Havdalah candle, go over to a couple of chavrusis that are learning together on one part of the Beis Medrash, and say, here, make a Bar Mariash on the candle. Everybody will make a Bar Mariash. So 6 people will stop learning, but you have another 94 people who are still learning. Then those guys will go back to learning, and then they'll go to the next group, and the next group will make a Bar Mariash. but at no point in time are you going to be mevatel the entire bismedrash. So you would think that would be better. Kamash balon the mechaber not that way. Afilu hachi ha adifa. The mechaber is coming to tell you that even though you're going to be mevatel the entire bismedrash or the bar maria eish, that is still the right thing to do. Why? Mishum baroiv am hadras melech. He brings us down for the Gemara and Brachas to Gimel Amud Aleph, because that's the rule that we always say. We always say that when we have a bracha where we can have everybody get together, everybody be quiet, everybody pay attention to one person making the bracha and be yotzei with his bracha, that's baroiv am hadras melech. Think about it again. Now look at it from the other perspective. Now they're going to give a clap on the Amud. One person is going to make a barei mareyesh. 100 people are going to be yotzei in this bracha all at one time. That's roiv am hadras melech. The other way, it's 6 people at a shot. So then it's small little groups. So the zicha, big baroiv am hadras melech, to do the whole base medrash at the same time. Kasva achrayim, the achrayim right. And this is going to go back to the discussion that we had earlier. Kasva achrayim, the achrayim right. Da fila misha kvar berech barei mareyesh. Somebody who already made his own barei mareyesh, yachal lachzer levarich lahitzi b'nei beisai. He can now go home and be moitzi other people in making a barei mareyesh. Why? Because of the whole shmooze that we had at the beginning of this year. Because barei mareyesh is not like barei mina b'samim. Barei mareyesh is more like birchas hamitzvahs. So you're a bar chiyuva, you have a chiyuv of barei mareyesh, even though you already made your barei mareyesh, so you already ticked off the box of barei mareyesh and you were already yotzei, and this week you're no longer chayiv in barei mareyesh. Still using arvus, you can make the bracha to be moitzi somebody else, because you're a bar chiyuva, and we're talking about berachas hamitzvahs. So that's based on what we learned earlier. Okay, now let's move along. Siman tes vav. Ner b'soich chekoi. If somebody, literally what these words mean is, somebody has a ner, he has a candle, but it's b'soich chekoi. He's protecting it against his bosom. So it's funny because 2 feet away from me, I have candles. But let's imagine it's Hanukkah, so my Hanukkah lichter over there. But let's say this is the candle. So we all know sometimes somebody lights a candle, right? We have this Hanukkah. You're lighting a candle, but you have to walk a distance to the menorah for whatever reason. Or you're lighting the menorah outside, and you have to bring the menorah outside. You light the candle, the wind starts to blow the candle. So what do? You protect it. You cover it up. So Rabbi Isai, that's ner b'soich chekoi. Somebody has a ner, and he's covering it up, and he's protecting it against his body. Now, if you do that, you know what happens? You can't see the ner. So ner b'soich chekoi, if somebody's protecting a ner against his body, oy b'soich panos, or the ner is inside some kind, I'm not going to use the word lantern, because a lantern is made to let out light. This is not a lantern. This is a keli, a utensil that's made to cover and protect the ner. So it's some kind of a metal lantern. It has little holes in it to let air in. It might even have little holes in it to let out a little bit of light. But basically, the ner is covered. You can't see the ner, and you can't get a lot of hana from the ner. There's not a lot of light coming out. So that's 2 cases so far. Both of these cases are cases where you cannot see the flame, and you cannot get enough illumination to benefit from the flame. Ner b'soich chekoi, oy b'soich panos. Pirush, the Ramah says, what is this panos? Kli, it's a utensil, shenoisen by a ner, that you put a ner inside, shaloi tichpe. So it's a keli that's made to protect the ner. Instead of you going like this to protect the ner, you have a keli that's made to protect the ner. Oy, or a third case, says the Mechaber, b'soich aspaklaria. An aspaklaria is already a lantern. An aspaklaria is also a keli that holds an air, but now the walls of the keli are glass. So this is giving off illumination. Okay, you would think right away, what's the problem with an aspaklaria? You could see the air, you could see through the glass, and you could get enough from it. Mishnah Berurah is going to say the problem with aspaklaria is, according to some shittas, it's not enough to be able to see the ner and get hana from the ner. The ner has to be uncovered. And in a lantern, the ner is not covered. It's covered with glass, but it still is covered. So 3 cases so far. We have so far b'soich chekoi, we have in the panas, so we have 2 cases where you cannot see the flame, and you cannot get any hana from the flame. And then we have a third case, the aspaklaria, where you could see the flame and you could even get hana from the flame. Now, continues the Mechaber, or any case where royas hashalheves, or let's say you have a case where you could see the flame, but you can't benefit from it. That's a very simple case. The Gabbai is making Havdalah all the way in front of the Bismerish. Or it's Motzei Shabbos after a Simcha in the catering hall, and somebody is making Havdalah all the way on the other side of the hall. And they pick up the Havdalah candle, holding up the Havdalah candle. You can see the flame, but you go like this, it's just a formality. You're so far away, you can't get any hana from it. So that's Royas Hashalevis. You can see the flame. Aber Ve'enu Mishtamish La'ira, but you can't get any benefit from it. Or another case, Mishtamish La'ira. There's also a case where you could get benefit from the light, Ve'enu Royas Hashalevis, but you can't see the flame. That's also, I could give you a couple of simple cases. One is, maybe the guy that's making Havdalah is around a corner. So, the hall that you're in has a corner somewhere. And the one who's making Havdalah, holding the Havdalah candle, is in the corner. He lifts up the Havdalah candle for everybody to see it. You're around the bend. The light is being cast from the Havdalah candle, and you could see the light, and maybe you're even close enough that when you go like this, you could get hana from it, and you could discern between the end of your nail and the beginning of your skin. But you can't see the flame, because the flame is around the corner. In all of these cases, says the Mechaber, Ein mevarchin aleh, you cannot make a bar eish, achie royas hashalheves, you need to be able to see the flame, mishtamish la'ira, and you have to be able to be mishtamish, you have to be able to get the benefit of the illumination. And again, we have one case thrown in here, which is the aspaklaria. Now, the aspaklaria, you really have both. You can see the flame, and you can be mishtamish la'ira. But the Mishnah Berurah is going to say the problem is, there are shittas that hold that since it's covered, albeit with glass, but it is covered, that's not enough to be able to make a Bari Mara Eish. There are those who disagree. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah begins back in Ayin Dal Lamed Aleph. Mishnah Berurah is cut Lamed Zayin. Ner b'soy chekoi, if you're protecting a ner against your body, Hainu shoysa tmuna b'soy chekoi, you're hiding the ner in your bosom. You're hiding it against your body. She'ena raya shall have it, so you can't see the flame. Nor could you benefit from the light. And this, I don't know what you want to call it, a flame protector, keli, this keli that you put the nair in so it shouldn't become extinguished, is the same way. It's like a metal keli, so it's covered up. You can't see the flame, and you can't get enough benefit from the illumination. Then the Mechaber adds a third case, and that's the case of the glass lantern. In that case, even though you could see the flame, by looking through the glass of the lantern, according to these shittas, this is not called mamish seeing the flame. In the context of the halachas of Bari Mara Eish, it's not enough to see the flame through a glass. The flame has to be exposed. And this is not called exposed. I wonder if this also has to do, maybe, throwing out a possibility, with the quality of glass that they had. Maybe the glass that they had, it was more like a diffuser than it was clear that you could mamish see the flame. I don't know. The Magen Avraham and other Achreidim write, the dafka bepanas shehi shel barzel. When we say that a panas is no good, it's talking about a metal panas, av sheyesh b'nekavim, because the metal panas, even if it has holes in it, ein raya hashaleves lahedya, you can't really see the flame. Aval ba'aspaklaria shel schuchis, but by a glass lantern, mikri raya hashaleves. The Magen Avraham, other Achreidim, they disagree with the Mechaber. The Mechaber says a glass lantern you can't make a bracha on. Why? The nair is not exposed, even though you could see it. Says the Magen Avraham and other Achrayim, no. If it's a glass lantern, that's good enough. A glass lantern is called that you can see the shalheves and you can make a Bari Mara Eish. As long as it's close enough to you, so that you can get benefit from the fire. But if it is that close to you, then you could make a Bari Mara Eish. He says, take a look at the Biur Halacha, Sheivenu, where we bring down the Kama Paiskim Seivrim Kedas Shulchan Aruch. Many Paiskim follow the sheet of the Shulchan Aruch, and they say it's in a glass lantern, you cannot make a bari mari eish. Therefore, it's not kedai to be makel and make a bari mari eish on a candle in a glass lantern. If it's if you could see the flame, but you can't use the illumination, then you cannot make a bracha. What's that case? Says the Chavetz Chaim, going for example, you're very far away from the Havdalah candle, so you could see the flame, but you're not getting enough illumination to be able to discern between two coins. You're not getting enough illumination that you could see the end of and discern between the end of the nail and your skin. And then we had the other case, and that was that you could be mishtamish la'ora, you could benefit from the illumination, but you can't see the flame. Says the Mishnah, you're standing off on the side or around a corner. So yes, you could get the benefit of the illumination that's being cast by the Havdalah candle, but you can't see the flame. You can't make a Borei Morei Haish. Okay, that concludes a very interesting Siman Reish Ches Tzadik. Now we move along to Siman Reish Tzadik Tes. Shaloi lechol, you're not allowed to eat. V'loi lashlei shum malacha, and you're not allowed to do any malacha. Kaid b'sheyavdil, before you make havdalah. Uba yud seifim, and here we have 10 seifim. Says the Mechaber Sif Aleph, also lechol shum davar, you're not allowed to eat anything. Ayafilu lishtais yayin, or to take a drink of wine, or sha'ar mashkin, or any other beverages. Chutz bimayim, with the exception of water. Misha techshach, from once it gets dark, Motzei Shabbos. We'll have to define that. Ad sheyavdil, until you make havdalah. It's okay. Very basic halacha. The Mechaber is telling us here. We know that when Shabbos comes in Friday night, you're not allowed to be toyim anything. The flashing lights that you're seeing, there's an ambulance outside across the street, and you're seeing the sirens, the lights of the sirens coming in through the window in front of me. I hope it's not too much of a distraction. Nothing I can do about it. So we know that when Shabbos comes in, also litoim, you're not allowed to taste anything at all from the time Shabbos comes in until you make havdalah. So that's on the front end of Shabbos. On the back end of Shabbos, we have a very similar halacha. At the end of Shabbos, once it gets dark and Shabbos is departing, you're not allowed to eat or drink anything until you make havdalah, with the exception of water. Motzei Shabbos, you could drink water before you make havdalah. So says the Mechaber. Now, why is this? So we've explained other times. This is because Shabbos has to be bracketed off on both ends. When Shabbos comes in, we're only going to eat or drink if it's l'chvoid Shabbos. The only eating or drinking that we're going to do are going to be the Oinig Shabbos of the Seudah Shabbos. And Seudah Shabbos requires Kiddush. So there's no eating or drinking before Kiddush, because if you eat or drink before Kiddush, what is that? Is that weekday eating? But it can't be weekday eating because it's already Shabbos. It's Shabbos eating, you didn't make Kiddush yet. So we need a bracket. The bracket is Kiddush. Once you have Kiddush, now you could eat, you could drink. On the back end of Shabbos, the same halacha applies. Once it's getting dark outside, once Shabbos is departing, you're eating now? What is that? Is that Sunday eating? You're eating a weekday meal now? It's not appropriate to eat a weekday meal. You didn't make havdalah yet. So what is this now? So we have to bracket off. We have to close off Shabbos with havdalah. Then you can sit down. You can eat malav malka. But before that, you cannot eat. Now the question becomes, what does this mean? Misha techshach. Once it gets dark. What does that mean? So let's take a look here at the Mishnah Katan Aleph, Misha techshach. This halacha kicks in once it gets dark, says the Mishnah Berurah, va'afilu b'safik chashecha, even during Bein Hashmoshes. Once Bein Hashmoshes begins, no more eating or drinking until you make havdalah. Now, the Mishnah Berurah goes to define this a little bit more. He says, remember what I told you earlier in Siman Reish Samach Aleph, Mishnah Berurah, Sif Katan Chav Gimel, Tinaktinon, where we paskin, L'safik Chashecha, we paskin that when does Ben Hashmoshes begin? Tekef Misha Shaka Hachama. Right after Shkia, we go with the Gra. The Shitas HaGra is that what we call Shkia, sunset, immediately following Shkia, that's when Ben Hashmoshes begins. That's when the twilight period begins, which is Safik Yom, Safik Laila. So right after Shkia, that's what's called Misha Techshach. You cannot eat anymore. Now, of course, we're going to have to define this. So, The Naktina, we paskin l'savach ha'shecha, tekif b'sheshaka achama, we paskin ben hashpashus begins right after Shkia, le'inyan adlakas neris v'cham malacha. We learned you have to light your Shabbos neris before Shkia. You're not allowed to do any malacha after Shkia. Why? Because right after Shkia is ben hashpashus. When we come up, nevertheless, nearly it seems to me, says the Chavetz Chaim, the le'inyan achila suda shlishis, when it comes to eating shalosh shudas, if you did not yet eat su'udas shlishis, and it's already shkia, bevadai tzarich lecha lafila achar shkia. You must sit down to eat shalosh shudas even after shkia. Va'afilu l'shar achila, even other eating. You already were yaitza shalosh shudas. Imutoiv lecha v'lishtais. If you're very hungry and you want to eat something, or you're thirsty, you want to take a drink, gam kain ein lahachmir. You don't have to be machmir ad chatzi shah shekodim tzeis hakechavim, until a half hour before tzeis. Now I'm going to go with the numbers according to Rav Moshe Zechet Tzaddik V'Kodesh L'Vracha. So Rav Moshe says that when it comes to Shabbos, we should be following Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam, we've gone over this 100 times. I'm not going to go through it, in all of the details. But Rabbeinu Tam says when is Tzeis HaKechavim? Tzeis HaKechavim is 72 minutes after Tchila Shkia. What's Tchila Shkia? What we call Shkia. So when you look at the words of Rabbeinu Tam says that Tzeis HaKechavim is 72 minutes after Shkia. The Mishnah Berurah says over here that you can eat shalosh shudas, or if you're hungry and you want a snack, or you're thirsty and you need a drink, you can have it until a half hour before Tzeis HaKechavim. Now, Rav Moshe and others say, Tzeis HaKechavim, according to Rabbeinu Tam, 72 is not a magic number. It's not pshat that Tzeis HaKechavim is 72 minutes after Shkia everywhere on the planet. It depends on your latitude and your longitude. In the New York metropolitan area, Rav Moshe said 50 minutes after Shkia is Tzeis HaKechavim. Even on the longest day of the year in the New York metropolitan area, once you're at 50 minutes after Shkia, that's Tzeis HaKechavim. Okay, so if 50 is Rabbeinu Tam, if 50 is Tzeis HaKechavim, when's a half hour before Tzeis HaKechavim? 20 minutes after Shkia. So here we have a Mishnah Berurah that's telling me, if you use Rav Moshe's numbers, we have a Mishnah Berurah over here that's telling me that if it's Shkia and you didn't eat shalosh shudas yet, you could still sit down to eat shalosh shudas for another 20 minutes. You ate shalosh shudas already, but you're hungry, you want to have a piece of cake, you're thirsty, you want to have a drink, you want to drink even not water, you want to drink even something other than water, you want to have a coffee, you want to have a tea, you could do it until 20 minutes after Shkia. As long as it's still a half an hour before Tzeis HaKechavim. Okay. Kasav Magen Avram, the Magen Avram writes, the Masha Kasav Mechaber B'Shetekshach. He's just pointing out like kind of a technical detail here. When the Mechaber says that once it's dark outside, once it's Shkia, once you're getting into Ben Hashmoshes, you're not allowed to eat or anything anymore. Mayri Kishaloi Yispal Arvis. He's talking about when you didn't daven Ma'ariv yet. Avalim Yispal Arvis, let's say you already davened Ma'ariv. Afilu Yispal Min Ba'od Yom. Even if you davened Ma'ariv while it was still day. The Yesh Oifet Shemoter V'Chibesim in Reish Tzadik Gimel Siv Gimel. Okay, what's this talking about? In Reish Tzadik Gimel, the Mechaber presented us with a very interesting case. The Mechaber spoke about a person who has an oinus, and he needs to daven Ma'ariv early. Why? One case that he gave us was somebody has an emergency, or it's for a Dvar Mitzvah. He needs to travel more than the limit of the Tchum out of the city. And he has to get to where he needs to get to ASAP after Shabbos. So over here we have a guy who on Shabbos wants to walk as far as he's allowed to on Shabbos. So he wants to go to the limit of the Tchum on Shabbos so that the minute Shabbos is over, he's already at the Tchum limit, and then he can travel further to where he needs to get to. And he's not going to be able to make Havdalah at the Tchum. Because at the Tchum, he's not going to have wine. He's not going to have what he needs to make Havdalah. So the Mechaber said, this person could daven Ma'ariv Shabbos evening after Plag HaMincha. We know about making early Shabbos. So we daven Ma'ariv after Plag on Erev Shabbos. This fellow is going to daven Ma'ariv after Plag on Motzei Shabbos. So he daven Ma'ariv early. Says the Mishnah Berurah, even that person, if he davens Ma'ariv early, chalal of Chavis Havdalah, that person, once he davened Ma'ariv, now he has a chiyuv of Havdalah, v'asa lechal ad sheyavdal ala kais. He wouldn't be allowed to eat until he makes Havdalah ala kais. So if he davened Ma'ariv right after the plag, he's not going to be allowed to eat anything. Forget Mishatetchach. It's going to be also for, till now we're talking about people who it becomes also for them to eat by shkia. This person, it's going to become also for him to eat an hour and 15 minutes earlier. It's going to become also for him to eat by plag, because he's davening Ma'ariv right after plag. Once he davens Ma'ariv, his next chiyuv is Havdalah. He already has a chiyuv Havdalah, he's not allowed to eat anymore. Okay, we're going to pause over here. Thank you so much for joining me for Limud HaTorah. This Limud HaTorah should be Megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rosh Hashanah should send Yeshua's, Refuas, Parnas, and Shadukim to all those in need. We should be Zoichet to see the B'Yas Gal Tzedek. B'Meher V'Yameinu Amen. Be well.